Good evening. It's 5:01 on Monday, June 8th, 2026. I'm calling to order the Placerville Planning Commission special meeting. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Stratton?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Sylvester?
Here.
Vice Chair Lepper?
Here.
Chair Keeney?
Here. Have a full house on the dais.
No, you're fine.
We'll go to item number 3, items of interest to the public and public comment on non-agenda items. Would anyone, or how about the only one in the audience, care to speak to non-agenda items? All right, I'll take that vigorous shaking of the head as a no. Moving on, do we have any written communications on non-agenda items?
No written communications.
Okay. And so we'll get right to the focus of tonight's special meeting. Number 5, matters from commissioners. This is 5.1, historic design review discussion and on updates to the City Council. So tonight, since it's not a site plan review or variance request or anything like our typical work, we're going to take a little bit different approach, just kind of have a full discussion, bring in public comment as indicated, as needed. So I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Kendrick, for your staff report.
Thank you, Chair Keeney and Commissioners. Carol Kendrick, Director of Development Services. In 2024, I believe, and early 2025, the City Council did task the Planning Commission, which is also the Historic Advisory Committee, with coming up with a historic design guidelines. At our strategic plan meeting this year with the City Council, it was asked what the status of that was, and so that's why we're here tonight, is for the full commission to be able to discuss what updates they're going to provide to the City Council and then timelines on achieving other tasks. So that concludes my presentation. I turn it back over to the Planning Commission.
Wow, that's it. Okay, so City Council's asking for a status update. All right. Well, to that end of providing an update to the City Council, I prepared some documents for review by the Commission and the public on how we could respond to this request from City Council. And since it is just a brief request, we could just be very quick and say, we're working on it. But since we've convened a special meeting at some expense to the city, I really think, and I hope the rest of you agree with me, that this is a great opportunity to move forward with our work and take some public comment and possibly craft something that we can use in the future. So that's what I sent to staff to post on the website, and I hope you've all had a chance to review. It was composed of a cover letter to you, and then addressing the 2 of the 4 recommendations that we quite some time ago passed on to City Council, but they came back, and I hope you reviewed the memo from Mr. Cleve Morris, emphasizing that at that time City Council felt that recommendation 4 took top priority, but they also saw a lot of value in recommendation 1. So that's how I focused my draft remarks for your consideration, and that's really what we've done. Alyssa, you've been tracking all the work, and so this is really what we've been looking at. So we've been working on recommendations 1 and 4. So to that end, it was my hope that we could jump right into recommendation 4 and then also I was hoping, Amy, you could help fill in that, all the work that you've done on recommendation 1, because it's a lot.
I did, yes.
Okay, so-
But like a half hour ago, so.
But you
I
can.
haven't shared it, but I have it here.
Yeah.
I worked on some wording. yeah.
Fantastic. And also, I don't know how complete, it may just be rough draft in your mind, but if we can definitely talk about it, and then you can send it to staff. And so we can keep this ball rolling on recommendation 1. Recommendation 4, I know it's a super long memo. It's like 5 pages, I think. It has references, but I really felt that was important to make that a historical document. That really rolls in, well, a lot of discussions that we've had. We've had this item on our agenda before, talking about the SOI standards, and we have our practical experience. And so we've had a lot of conversations. And then, Catherine, I got to thank you for all the work you did comparing where Placerville is in this, as far as the way we handle our historic districts and the way all these other jurisdictions that you researched, how we compare to them. So looking at all that information, it was just a matter of putting it together and synthesizing it. And it's, as I said in my cover to you, these are drafts, and I hope that we can come to consensus on language in that memo, and perhaps send that on to City Council if that's everyone's preference by the conclusion of tonight's meeting. So that's what I sent out to you commissioners. So a brief overview of our work to date. Ryan Carter's here, so that you and Kirk Smith, and I'm going to be very casual. This is, since we don't have a big crowd here, I think, Ryan, we definitely want to hear your comments. I don't know if you had a chance to review any of those documents, but what you hear us discussing, if you just kind of let us know that you got something to weigh in on it, we appreciate hearing from you, because you were part of that special committee that reviewed what came out of that workshop quite some time ago. And so you and Kirk Smith put together that memo that then became part of what the commission sent on to the city council. That's our history lesson. Now, looking at I already talked about what was in the Cleve Morris memo, so I don't, unless there's something somebody else wants to bring up about that memo at this time, I'll just go ahead, Catherine.
I just wanted to say thank you for all of your effort in putting this memo together, because it was, I'm sure,
It was a lot of work.
a heavy
Thank
lift.
you.
Yes.
And, full disclosure, Catherine and I were both working. We've reported out on this before, but so she and I occasionally talked about her work, but you shared all of your, I'd say your database of all the other jurisdictions that you looked at. So everyone knows, the result of her work. But she and I did have discussed this in the past. And also I asked Catherine to review that memo that was in the, attached to the agenda for tonight's meeting. I want to say that too. I want to get on public record, Yeah, we're volunteers, and we took this on. We've got lives. We got this job. We've got jobs. We've got families, and so this is more volunteer work. And so, yeah, I think it's. I think we've made great progress, and I want to emphasize that in anything we report to the City Council. We've made great strides. We've done a lot of reviewing. It's just very difficult to get more work done when you're also constrained by public meeting laws. We can't just get together when the 5 of us could get together, or 3 of us could get together. We can only meet in pairs, and then other than that, it has to be in public in an agendized meeting, and then we take public comments. So that makes this process very, very slow. But anyway, I just want to take a moment to thank everybody, Alyssa, Amy, Catherine, and Kirk, your work on the original report out from the special committee. And just, going above and beyond what you signed up for when you said, oh, I want to be a planning commissioner. All right. So I'm going to cover, let's see, here we go. Actually, I want to get into my Word document here so that I can, want to actively take notes and get all your comments as we go along. So, so in my memo to you, I went ahead, they asked for a framework, and so that's what I came up with. And when we look at what other jurisdictions have done, what we've done, you look at the documentation that we have available to us, Placerville is limited in that we have, honestly, it's a vaguely worded ordinance. We don't really know what their intent was, and we don't have what's known as a context statement for our historic districts. And I think in part that's because Placerville did this so early on. I'm not really sure that, yeah, for some reason this has been in place for a long time. A lot of the references that we got from Catherine, those ordinances are newer than ours. And I think as this developed, people realized the importance of a context statement. You couldn't just go on, oh yeah, that, this looks right, this kind of feels right in our community, because things change. So we don't have a context statement for our historic districts, but we do have our inventory. And so in a nutshell, that's what I think the framework that is proposed here is, that we utilize that as best we can. We've got the historic district inventory, and we can use that as to evaluate whether a structure under consideration is a contributing or a non-contributing structure. And then, if it is a contributing structure, we put it through what I proposed, an evaluation of any proposed materials. And, these are things we've talked about all along. What's the texture? What's the depth? What's the, I came across shadow lines. I like that. That really catches the imagination for sighting, shadow lines. So those kinds of things. We will evaluate all the materials, and if it's a non-contributing structure, then we step back and we look at what's written in our ordinance and what our past practice has been, as we're looking at keeping the aesthetic and maintaining the aesthetic of the historic district. Catherine, you got your thumb on the button. Why don't everybody just go ahead and turn on your mics, and I'm just trying to get us oriented, but go ahead and jump in with comments.
No, I didn't have any comments. I was just thinking with my thumb.
Oh, she's okay. Well, there's no race, to be first with the answer. There's no prize here. So I was like, God darn, I don't have to buzz in. I think that's enough about recommendation 4. Go ahead and ask me any questions about the document if you have them, or just jump in with your opinion on if you think this is a suitable approach.
I guess I do actually have a question. So is our goal with this meeting today to produce a document that we're going to approve and then will then be submitted to City Council, or are we
I think that's a little
still mulling
lofty.
it over and
How the rest
then,
of you feel
okay.
about it. But if we could, we've got this special meeting time. If we could craft the document, and if what we have is close, that would be fantastic. Let's see where our discussion goes. From what I hear from Ms. Kendrick, they're just looking for an update. So we'll say, here it is, and it still needs to be hammered out a little bit. But then we'll set we were never told any kind of timeline before, and so maybe rather than a finished document, we could say, oh, this is what we're working on, and here's our goal to have it completed. But if we get it done tonight, I'm all for it.
Catherine, my questions were
Could you
about...
speak into the microphone, please?
Hello. My questions were about the work that you did, the extensive work, I think about 5 different cities that had guidelines. Do you see anything among those groups, in that group, that's like what's proposed in the draft?
Well, I think what the way that I view what's this framework that's being presented here is it's more of just a direct response to the city's recommendation from their prior, from Cleve's memorandum. And so it's addressing some of those key items that they specifically wanted us to respond to. So in my mind, this is part of getting to those more comprehensive guidelines, if that's the way that the city wants to handle this.
See, the way I understood the original mandate, the resolution from a dozen years ago, is it something that initiates from us. We can give advice. So what I'd like to know is if there's any one particular city, county, that's done a program that is like what is proposed here. Anybody that follows that deviation from the historic Interior Secretary's guidelines like this?
No, I don't think so. I think every one of the jurisdictions that you found, and I, from my research too, they all have context statements. They have a specific inventory. And in some cases, like City of Benicia has, and this came to Planning Commission some time ago, City of Benicia has a lot of this as ministerial. So if you want to change out a window or a door, it's a ministerial action. It doesn't come before a Planning Commission. It only comes to Planning Commission if, there's something else. It's an exceptional change. So they don't call their commissioners routinely for things that we've dealt with, windows, doors, siding. Those are all codified, and it's a ministerial change. And this may predate your tenure on the Planning Commission, but Andrew Painter proposed that a long time ago. So I'm going to think 2017, 18, something like that, because that's what he was seeing. Other jurisdictions were doing that. But in order to do that, you have to have a clear context statement of what it is you're looking for to preserve in your historic districts. And we're lacking that. And if you remember at the end of my memo, that's one of the recommendations, and we can kind of bolster that. Further recommendation for City Council is to hire a professional that can analyze our historic districts and write that context statement. And then we can move in a different path. That would be totally up to City Council if they want to take it that direction.
Did Andrew Painter reduce those comments to writing?
What's that?
You referred to Andrew Painter maybe a dozen to 12, 19 years ago, made some suggestions about.
It was a memo to Planning Commission. So yeah, it's in the archives for the Planning Commission. You can pull it up.
That'd be something that'd be helpful to have if we're using that kind of structure as a model.
Well, he was just positing the idea. Do we want to go that direction? And I believe the vote was unanimous. No, the Planning Commission felt, and I still feel that way. I don't know about the rest of you. The projects we get are very unique, individual. We don't have a cohesive historic districts. There's a lot of different architectural types. And so for each one, you're looking at maybe a different thing to preserve. So you can start to see how it's easier when you start out with the historic districts. You have the context statement, you draw your map, and then you can go with guidelines. It's a different kind of process than what the city of Placerville took on.
Well, I ask questions to learn, and when you refer to a context statement, what would be an example of that?
Oh, I don't want to get into that. It's you'd have to look into.
Well, I was asking,
all these
actually, initially I was
jurisdictions have their
asking-
own, but
I was asking the other commissioner who'd done the work on those bodies.
Well, are you asking kind of what like a context statement would look like?
Yes, exactly.
So essentially what it is it's describing the period of significance that our city would want to preserve. And it takes into account like the goals of what we want to preserve, things like that. So there's a process to developing it. There's looking at, what are our existing.
Right, so this
historic
is under
resources
further
and things like that.
recommendations, right? I think this is something that Catherine added to this draft memo.
That's why I was
We-
asking her the
It says
question.
right here what a context statement is. Define the areas of significant elements, and then, then you could use the historic inventory. So, we've put that in there, and I think it's a good thing for city council to consider to do.
Yes.
No, it's just if there was one particular county that had guidelines that would encompass a context statement, is there one you could point to that you think is attractive?
I did a lot of research on the cities too, and as Chair Keeney said, we are below where a lot of the other ones are, and it can be very simple. I think to not complicate the context statement in that it's a huge thing. It really just says we have these historic districts. This is why we choose to have them, and these are our priorities within them. And they're very basic, and they just kind of outline why they exist and why we are having homeowners come before us to have it evaluated.
Do you have one of the,
Well, I've done a presentation here where I talked about the city of Redlands. I've talked about the city of,
so it's in, City of Redlands would be an example.
that's one of them, and it's also in
Okay,
Catherine's
that's the
document.
answer.
City of Benicia,
Yeah. Long
Bodega,
Beach.
California,
Yeah.
all of these communities.
If you Google historic districts in California, you get just a laundry list of websites from different cities, and go and just roll around in them, and you'll start to see consistent things, which is exactly what she was just describing, context statements for why these exist and what our priorities are within them. And then additionally, the timelines, and then additionally to that is the contributing versus non-contributing, which is why I've kind of been hammering that for a long time, and that Catherine has really highlighted as a priority, because then it really nails down which structures in the districts are to be held to a higher standard versus the rest of the structures in there, which we, as explained in here, maintain the aesthetic of the district without necessarily being a really important or significant historic structure. And so that's one of the recommendations that I think is really important, is to do the context statement to tell people why. Because again, when you look at our website versus many, many other cities, so it's hard to pin down one because most have more advanced descriptions and layouts than we do. It just really describes like why they were created, what the priorities are, and what homeowners should expect.
Now,
Well,
when
that
I
I
reviewed them,
saw,
Kirk,
but I didn't-
I couldn't find a city that had a context statement that I thought we could just plug into Placerville. That's really was what I was hoping for. I looked at small communities like Bodega. Let's see, there's a small foothill community south of here, Murphy's. I looked at their historic district, and it just wasn't something we could, like I said, plug and play. So, as you've been provided these links. As you research them, you might find something that is readily adaptable to Placerville. So, and you can bring that forward, and we can consider that as our context statement. We'd have to take a look at it and see if it's really applicable. But so that's, the context statement. We have the definition in this memo, so since we don't have one for our historic districts, what we do have is a historic inventory. And so that has the date of original construction, it has a description of the architecture, and we routinely rely on that when people come forward with a proposal, something, we pull a reference out from our historic inventory. So that's really what I'm proposing that we continue to rely on. It's just in this memo, I think what this does is put it in black and white that this
It's the best
this is a
information
solid
we have.
procedure. This is what we've done. I think we've been very successful. And it's a way, and it just puts it in black and white so the community knows what it is the Planning Commission is looking for and how we're going to proceed.
No, I read them, what's provided by reference, as well as scores of the others. I just didn't recall anybody calling it a context statement, that's all. So when you've used other words to describe it and I know what you're talking about, and the answer to that question from a few minutes ago, it's two particular.
I agree. I actually had made a note for myself because
There's also
just
era of
that maybe
significance
that
is
was something
used.
to add as
Yeah.
a definition to this for like the next round.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be
The
called
mission statement
context.
for the
Yeah.
districts, you
But
know?
it's a
Description.
standard, term that's used in this context.
Yeah. So we don't even have an era of significance defined for our historic districts. We just have the note, it's in our goals and objectives in our general plan, that we want to preserve our history. But what that is wasn't made clear at that time. And another reason that we need that era of significance or context statement, if you look back at the memo from Mr. Morris, this one kind of threw me. When he's talking about, he wrote about recommendation 4, bullet point number 3. Consider a year to establish a cutoff for historic designation, and then parentheses 1950. And that one just, I read that at the time, and I wasn't really sure, other than, okay, that's more than 50 years old. Yes, that's in some instances that is eligible for historic status, but our inventory doesn't go any further than 1940. Actually, most of them are 1930, the latest. And so I realized the importance of developing and defining our era of significance.
The reason for that inventory setting off that date was because at that time of the date, which is decades ago, 50 years ago, would have been 30s and not the 1950s. So if you fix a date, it's going to change.
Well, and that's another way that the city could move. They could say that, this is subject to change. But typically what we're seeing is other jurisdictions look at the architecture that they've got and they say, this is what we want to preserve today. And, City of Placerville, if we had a cluster of 1960s architecture that they felt was worth preserving, they
that
could
would
create
become a
yet another
district,
historic
yeah.
district. But to say that the ones that exist now, we have 3 residential districts, and to say that the cutoff date, so what's 50 years ago? Oh, I'll say 1960, just arbitrary, just go round numbers, 1960.
70s.
That doesn't make sense to make 1960 the cutoff date in our historic districts, although that's more than 50 years ago from today.
So I think it's important to distinguish between like what the city is valuing as a historic resource, and by establishing these historic districts, and something just being old. So just because it's over 50 years old doesn't mean that that's necessarily that within that context that hasn't yet been defined, but we're trying to kind of build based on the information that we already have, that's available through the city. So just because it's over 50 years old doesn't mean that that's contributing to what the city has decided is the character and the resources that, that we want to put into preserving and for perpetuity.
Well, we're only talking about 3 districts, so how many houses would we be talking about that are 1950s, for example?
It's really beyond, that's outside of our expertise. We've got an inventory. Has anybody done a count on it?
No, but I do want to just talk about this recommendation a little bit really quickly, because I recall in the meeting watching the city council discuss our initial memo to them and then having this discussion. That was kind of a off the cuff, if I remember this correctly. I think it was Nicole talking about, is there a way that we can just like have a date where we no longer are considering it like super historic? And so it wasn't like we need a hard year or that is a huge priority of ours. That was an idea of how to classify homes, which I think has further fleshed out in our work to be really a contributing versus non-contributing designation versus a year. So I think that not taking this one very literally is a good idea, to not get wrapped up in it, because it was sort of a idea of how we could start classifying different properties in the districts, and not a requirement or a strong desire that we have this hard date, because I agree with you. One is that time keeps moving, and so, but really what it was how can we massage the classifications of homes in these districts. And the date was just an idea that was thrown out to say, hey, if your home is after this date, then it's essentially a non-contributing home. So I think getting wrapped up in the year isn't very constructive, and that was going to be one of my feedbacks on that. This in general, this designation is, I think a lot of this one will be addressed by having contributing versus non-contributing. The contributing ones will be held to a higher standard. It could be a contributing, we could have a new house built tomorrow in the historic districts that goes through review process, just like that home that got approved on that corner lot on Cedar Ravine. I can't remember exactly the details, but we had the look be to match the aesthetic of it. But that home is going to be new. I don't think it's been built. And so I think that not having a date, but rather saying that wouldn't be a contributing structure. It's not one of our historic structures, but still falls under the jurisdiction of, or whatever the word it would be, falls under the reasoning of you need to fit into the historic district. And so I think this year is really going to muck everything up. I don't think it's helpful or really effective. I think really that could be established with contributing versus non-contributing. You're in the district, but you're non-contributing. You need to keep the aesthetic, but not be held to this put in wood windows with weights thing that we may want to hold other homes to, which is part of the discussion of deciding what our context statement, right? Like what our priorities are within these districts for particularly contributing homes.
I hope I wasn't communicating the idea that I favored a cutoff date, because I
No,
wasn't.
I only wanted to just give the context because that's what I remember. That wasn't like, yes, this is what we want. We want a date. We want a hard date from the commission. It was, hey, is there a way that we can sort of figure out how to classify these homes? And a date was one idea thrown out to do that.
And I noted early on in this memo, I think you really brought up a salient point. That's without a context statement, and really it's not our expertise. We're planning commissioners. We aren't architects. For us to go and do the evaluation to say which house is a contributing versus a non-contributing, for us to do that work is really, I think that's the wrong way to go. I don't think that the Planning Commission should take that on.
I totally agree. I think it needs to be at least at the city council level, if not, an expert level would be the highest caliber, right?
Right.
But at a minimum, I think it needs to be the city council identifying that.
And another thing that occurred to me is that if we did that work, then we're essentially establishing evidence that we later have to bring in when we're doing our judgments. And to me, that just seems like an inherent conflict for us to be the ones who say, this is contributing versus, to walk up and down the street and do those evaluations. That I think puts us in
Totally
a
agree.
bad position further down the road.
Yes.
I don't think it necessarily has to be all that difficult, but that's why I really like the idea of linking it to our inventory, which is done, by another group, and then it's reported to us, whether it's in the inventory or not. Something that occurred to me about contributing and non-contributing is that, there's always going to be the exception, and I think that's something that we should write into our next round of the framework. It may not be in the inventory, but somebody's got some information, and they bring that information maybe to the attention of staff, or maybe they bring it during the site plan review and say, here's a document that shows that the house was actually constructed within, that time period that we've already established, but it somehow wasn't in our inventory. I think we need to specify that, in these cases, if new evidence is brought forward, we're not just relying on the inventory because it may have holes. But if somebody comes and presents that evidence, then of course it could be considered a contributor if it otherwise meets the requirements of the other structures that are on the inventory.
I would like to propose that we take a step back for a moment, because I know we've discussed this topic at multiple meetings, and just focusing on the content of the letter. I do think it would be great if we could like come up with some reasonable next steps as what to add into the letter, as well as what's being hindered by not having the funding to bring in like a consultant or something. So that way, City Council is aware which projects are on hold and what might be prioritized when budgets are more friendly or grant opportunities come available.
I think the thing that's been touched on by some of you so far is about the historic inventory, and that's on page 2. And here are my concerns. We've had testimony on that subject, as well as Commissioner Carter and I described why that's inadequate. The person who was responsible for that study and who sponsored it, Marilyn Ferguson is no longer here, but she said it's just a start, it's just a draft, it's got lots of holes in it, and that testimony is before us. So I feel uncomfortable putting a lot of emphasis on that. And what
where's that
we-
testimony?
Pardon?
Because I've never,
This is the reference where you refer to the refer to the inventory.
right, so where's the, I've never seen that testimony that the inventory is,
Kirk Smith is one. I've said it before. Ryan Carter said it. For example, you might recall that once I described the idea that in the Grass Valley material, there's one page that tells consumers how you too can go and study and research your property, find out about its history. And that's something you can incorporate. And nobody can say, we didn't know about it because Catherine Sylvester provided it for us.
I don't,
we all have
you
it.
know, in our inventory, you may have looked at it, I don't know if there's that statement that says incompleteness.
This is a dual thing. So one, the city council did also say that their priority was not the inventory. And that's why I kind of leaned into contributing versus non-contributing structures.
Do you notice that I didn't say that?
Okay, I'm going to finish my thought first. Okay, so one is the inventory getting updated as you described. Yes, you have stated before that that was a start at it. It's very clear that that was a start in it when you start digging into the inventory. There is fantastic statements about some of the homes that are in the historic districts that are on our website. They're very hard to find. So when I asked and worked with Kristen Hunter on that map that's been rolled out where you can click on the property, see the address and that it's in the historic district, my ultimate idea would that be exactly what you said. Their link in that property whatever thing that you click on, can't think of the word, but you click on the property and there would be a link in there to the statements, many of which are already in our website. They're just hard to find. And so I agree with you that that would be great, but the city council at that meeting, the same meeting where they talked about, where they formulated this memo, said, we don't have the money and we don't have the time to do a full inventory review right now. And so that is where I started going towards contributing, non-contributing. Let's at least identify if we're not going to do a full inventory review, which they stated the money is not there right now, then at least we can identify our contributing ones so that we can preserve those to the highest level.
And so, how, if we don't rely on, so we have, I guess, we have the inventory as a start, then how would we find other contributing structures?
So that was what I talked about, like, we need a baseline for where our historic districts are right now. Right now, we have no idea what things look like. So my dream idea that I presented was someone walks the streets, takes a picture, and that is our new baseline. That is where we are at, so that when non-contributing structures come in for review, we can see where they're at now and try in going forward to preserve the look that they have right now, because we can't go backwards. So there's been changes, there's been updates, there's been modifications. And so
So who does who determines then, based on those pictures that were taken?
yes, so that's what I'm saying is they said there's no money for that right now. So it would be an expert who would walk up. I remember I was like, I will walk up and down the street and take a
Right.
picture of it, like just to get a baseline. That is not an option, right? So the idea that they discussed at the meeting was that that would need to be an expert, that expert would come in and do an evaluation, which would then update our inventory pictures, database, and then in theory, add all of that information onto that map so that there's a robust information for each property address that includes any historic information that we have, some of which is on the website, some of which may be brought forward in the future. But that to be like a repository for all documents related to the home, as well as a current picture that would be a baseline. So again, we don't know what these houses have looked like. We don't know what they look like now. We don't have any reference material for that.
So
It just comes to us on the date that it comes to us.
Pictures and the descriptions are updating the inventory like we have in our recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we really need to have that,
We need a baseline.
but we also need to have a baseline, a baseline of conditions is what you're talking about.
Yes, okay,
We
this
also
is,
need
this is what this
context
house,
statement or period of significance identified.
that's a secondary part,
So that
yes.
those all go together.
The context statement and the contributing ones really identify as a city what our stated priorities are. The inventory allows us to receive a application and say, okay, what does it look like now, or what did it look like on June 8th? Let's say we did the pictures today. What did it look like on June 8th, 2026? If they come in 3 years from now and the property has structurally altered significantly without permit, right, without allowance, then we would know, okay, this is what we started with at least, and then from there, this is what happened or
Let's
what the
back
goal
up a
is.
little bit. Okay, I'm just going to.
This is my dream world that I'm talking about, right?
Let's say we never have the money to hire that expert to take the pictures.
We're where we are today.
Then how would you like us to proceed as a body with the contributing versus non-contributing? Do you think relying on the inventory and then as additional, if additional evidence is brought with the application, then in that moment we can say it's a contributing or?
No, for sure, no. I
No.
think that we would I think we have probably fewer contributing properties than none, right? And so,
I'm afraid
like,
you're right,
yeah,
but
let's say
to
there's
say.
5 within each district, just for sake of ease, 5 in each district that are a contributing property, and say there's 50 other houses in the district. Okay, just numbers. So if any of those 5 came before us, because they're contributing, right now we could get pictures of those 5. I think we could handle that. I think we could document and like show what those are, and that is where we want it to stay. For the rest of them, if we don't have the pictures and we don't have the baseline, we're where we are today. They come in with the picture. This is what it looks like today. This is what I want to
So
do.
as projects come to the city, then they are practically added to the inventory as a practical matter because the city now has pictures of the conditions right now.
Yeah, I
and-
mean, that would be one way to at least start chipping away at having
Of
a
adding to the-
documentation of
the
our
inventory.
Yeah, because right now, like I said, if they come to us and it was painted white a year ago and forever it was red,
Oh,
for
we
lack
don't
of,
do
okay, I'm not going to
color.
paint. I'm not going to paint. I don't want to paint. Okay, let's do like molding. Okay, so if they come to us and they have certain molding, then that could easily be an easy way to start incorporating that and building our inventory and our baseline of pictures. Again, when I talk about these things, this would be like my ultimate dream goal of what things would look like is we have documentation of where everything is at a certain time, and that is our date going forward that we sort of base things off of. Because again, we can't go back and take pictures of these houses in 1980 when this was written. So there's no way for us to preserve it as it would when they were written, but to go forward to try and start documenting and saying so that we have context in 20, 30 years from now of when we did all this work, what our goals are, what things looked like, and what we want them to maintain going forward, obviously within reason.
Has anyone spoken with some of these cities that we've been referencing and just gotten an idea of how they went about cleaning up their procedures?
You know, I didn't look at a lot of inventories at other cities. I more looked because I was more focused on how we can communicate these and how we can organize them on our website. So I didn't really dig into other inventories. And again, there's such a range. So some of them are, like I've talked about before, Pasadena has like 120-page personalized written standards and guidelines because they are significant and obviously visually significant historic structures. In ours, it's more of an area that in 1980 or whatever, that the city council decided that they wanted to maintain, right? So we have other beautiful old properties throughout our town. This isn't just like the only place that there's old structures in Placerville. This is just where our city has decided that we want to specifically maintain these 4 areas, looks-wise, aesthetics-wise. So again, I go back to, that's why I think the date is kind of hard, because we can also, if we wanted to, and this goes to priority 3 and 4, or 3, I think, in the ordinance, we could rewrite it and start incorporating other ones, because we have that big inventory of structures throughout town that are significant to us. They aren't really documented or memorialized.
That would be creating additional historic districts.
Or historic structures. I'm not even talking about creating new
Oh,
districts.
having an
Yes.
inventory. that's-
So one of the recommendations was maybe we need to rewrite the ordinance, which I think probably ultimately should be redone to really modernize. It's a pretty vague, as you said, ordinance, and
Well,
as
and
you
that could
described,
be
it's a
where City
vague.
council comes down. I mean, we are struggling with the data that we have at hand.
Yes.
And we're trying to emphasize the vagueness.
Yes.
And it's difficult to create a framework. So I'd like to get your thoughts, actually everyone's thoughts on a framework. So I had proposed up here on this early on, was this element 1 of, actually, element 2, determining if a structure is contributing versus non-contributing. What I see the framework being is something that this planning commission and future planning commissions can use in evaluating. So do you think we're wrong to even start talking about contributing versus non-contributing?
No, I think that would be a huge step in the right
So
direction.
what do you think about the description that we have here, and how can we, so I guess we can keep it, now that everybody's got a copy of this document, we can start editing it and adding comments. So let's not get too bogged down in that. So we'll keep
I
element
thought
2.
you're actually,
I wanted to go back on something, and I certainly didn't want to cut off anybody's discussion, but I mentioned and suggested nothing, absolutely nothing about updating the guidelines. And I was at all those meetings that was discussed before regarding the costs. So I wasn't suggesting that. It was a very modest suggestion. Rather than direct people to something that we know has limitations, dramatic limitations, you add the one list that is in Grass Valley, where they tell you where you can go as an owner to find out about your property. And
Okay, that's pretty much what Amy was describing, but, we don't have
can't-
that kind of money right now to do that.
that was what I heard the first time I raised it, was it cost us too much money. And when it was raised under the previous tenure, it was Pierre Ravaz who said he would be glad to do it. It's just photocopying the thing. And the simple additions are very modest, like tell them where the 2 museums are, things like that.
okay, so
So that was suggested, and then our new director didn't give this argument about we don't have staff resources. She said she'd do it. It's 1 page. It's 1 page. So at some point, just to put you on notice, I will ask for it to be a formal motion to add it, and you can reject it 4-1 if you want.
I think too, what's going on there too is, this is where we sort of got into it last time before, is where you keep saying it's 1 page, but it's not. And if you think it's 1 page, write the 1 page, present it, and let's see it. Because what my research has shown is that what we actually have this data. The 1 page you're talking about, to have owners be able to access information about there, it's on our website. It's there. If you go to the inventories, you can click the Amazon link that goes to the cloud, and there's for certain properties, there is a whole paragraph, a whole page about the history of it.
Right.
That exists. It's just,
But
the problem is,
as you pointed out, the
it's
inventory
all over the place.
isn't complete.
And it's also
So
housed.
we already
yeah.
have the information that you're
What you're telling me-
talking about.
Is that it's there,
Yes.
Yeah.
number 1.
Yes.
And number 2, we already recognize, I assume we all recognize, that the one from Grass Valley is not simply copying it. There'd have to be modifications. But
I don't know what the 1 page that you're referencing has on it, but what,
One from Grass Valley. Sorry, what's the thing from Grass Valley that would,
what they did is they have a section where a couple things that are very helpful. One is where the public can, for their property, do their own research and find out about the history of that property. They don't have to rely on somebody else's inventory.
Well, no one's preventing that, and I think you're starting to get to a good point that I think we should add to this framework is that, people, another important thing is not just the date and our inventory, but requiring applicants to provide better evidence to us. And I think that that's a key point to add to the framework, maybe a list of where locals in Placerville can access information that's not necessarily on our inventory, but they need to demonstrate to staff and to Planning Commission why it is that they need to use a substitute material. And I think that's getting down further in the framework, and I'd like to talk about that. So we were allowed to have substitute materials, but we need the applicants to help us write better or substantive findings. And so they need to tell us more about their structure. So I think here it is, standards for evaluating substitute materials, number 1. I think we should ask them to tell us what the character-defining features are of their structure. So that goes into the research that they can do and bring forward to Planning Commission as to help us with our deliberations. I really don't. I think we've talked around contributing and non-contributing enough. And before we move on, I realize I should let Ryan Carter speak up a little bit about that. But I want to draw this discussion to a close because we, in the past, we've gotten wrapped around these definitions. So, Ryan, if you have an opinion that you'd like to share about that, I don't want to close you out of this discussion. But as you can see, we're kind of getting wrapped around the axle on that those definitions.
I appreciate it. And just, I was actually going to raise my hand because I have another meeting, so I have to leave. But I will, I'll avoid giving my opinion because this is going to come to City Council. But thank you guys for continuing this conversation. Thank you for all the work that you're doing to continue it. I really love the direction of the contributing versus non-contributing. I think that will go a long way, and I agree with Commissioner Lepper about the date being less of a concern than whether a property is contributing or not. I like that direction in general. I also appreciate the discussion regarding the other jurisdictions that have already kind of laid the groundwork for what you guys are talking about. You know, Commissioner Smith and I, we dove deep into Grass Valley's. That was our favorite of all the ones that we found when we were doing our research. And they leaned heavily on the contributing versus non-contributing properties, and they laid that out very specifically. And so I will just say I'm excited to see what you guys send to us. And again, I'll say thank you for continuing this conversation. And thank you, Carol, for pushing this forward. I appreciate it. And I'll look forward to what you guys send us. But I'm going to avoid giving opinions just because I probably shouldn't do that. But anyway, just thank you guys. And I have to leave, unfortunately, so.
Okay, thanks a lot for that vote of confidence. And we appreciate your expertise. You put in a lot of time and effort on the special commission for that. So, if something comes up, though, take your hat off. Make sure that we know you have something to add, or just jump up to the microphone. Okay, so let's close down the discussion on contributing versus non-contributing.
So my feedback on the applicants bringing forward more information and defining character-defining features, I disagree with that approach. I don't think the average person has the time or interest in doing so. Well, let me back that up. I don't think most of the people know they live in a historic district to begin with.
And hold that thought.
Okay, so yeah, that's one of my big thoughts. Second to that, I don't think that people, if you're not a history buff like the Judge Thompson House or whatever, the people that this is a passion, this is an interest for them. And two, I think it's really tricky to ask a public member to define character features. And this is what, I'm not going to go back to the inventory, but I'm saying this is where I talk about having a baseline of look of things, because then the Planning Commission, our job is to establish what we see as character defining features. I use the example of the house that came in, I believe it was also in the Cedar Ravine one, where she wanted to replace the horizontal siding. She came in, say it was this big to begin with. She came in it with this big, and we reduced it to this big. If we asked her, she could have said, I don't think that the size of that is character defining. So I disagree with putting that onus on the homeowner. I think that is our job, and that is why it's coming before us, right?
Right.
And so I would not go into that. I think if people want to dig around or are doing their research and find something and bring it up in the meeting, cool, let's capture that. But I do not think that we should put that onus on them, nor do I think that we should allow that to be how things are determined.
I apologize. I got confused. I think I did make it, put it back on staff. They do the first level analysis, but it is standards for evaluating substitute materials. Above that is where I talk about the applicants. We need them to give us a statement. This is where Planning Commission has really struggled. So it says applicant shall first adequately demonstrate the infeasibility of using in-kind materials, and they shall provide samples as is currently required. Blah blah blah. We haven't been strict enough on that. We've had many cases where, in the moment, Planning Commission hashed out why it was infeasible, and one applicant had to go away and come back, and we talked a lot about the economics of it, but I think as part of the package, the first level package, if they want to use something that's not in-kind materials, it's on them to tell us as part of their package, why is it infeasible for you? And economics is that's absolutely valid.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of easy things that can be, fire. I could just start
Fire
there.
hazard,
That is
right.
going to be an easy. So again, I don't think that too much priority needs to be placed on, unless it's a contributing structure, that much priority needs to be placed on the material as so much as the aesthetic. You
Right.
see what I mean? So I would ease off having to bring the material. If someone brings me a piece of hardy board, I am not going to know the difference between whatever else. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not a construction person. I'm not an expert. And so I don't necessarily see value in that. What I see value in is, again, coming to us and saying, this is going to maintain the same look with a fireproof thing. The shingles on the one over here, the roof that we did a couple years ago maybe. I can't remember which district it was in, but it was across the freeway. And it was a beautiful home, and it did have historic look to it. But it was, I believe, a shingle roof, a wood shingle roof that was moving to some sort of composite or whatever. I don't remember the exact materials. But again, it maintained the look. It was the similar color. We went over the color with them. So I don't see a ton of value in, especially with the sustainability standards that came out that clearly state that switching out older materials that are not particularly relevant to ours, fire safe, and switching them to more modern materials that maintain the same look. I don't see value in proving that or bringing examples. I think that as long as we know that if they can, unless it's a contributing one and we want them to put wood on wood, you know what I mean? Then
No, I see. I'm not asking a commission to consider a different tack completely. I think that we've gotten ourselves frustrated, or we frustrated ourselves thinking about whether this is a strict application or not. It's an application of the standards, absolutely. What I'm asking us to consider is, in the case of a non-contributing, we are simply concerned about the look from the street, and that is just general thickness, the shape of the window. We could not care less what the material it is at all.
I think if it's non-contributing, it doesn't even have to be that strict. I mean, really, all you're trying to do is maintain the character of the district that it's in.
Right, we
So
don't
they can
want it-
change anything as long as the overall look.
We don't want them to change the
consistent.
architecture from what it is to something much more modern. We don't want them to put some sort of projection on it that changes the look of that and then impacts the rest of the district. And, we use these terms about like strict application or less strict, and I think that's what's caused us frustration. We're always strictly applying them because what we're looking at is the hierarchy. Within the standards themselves, the hierarchy is, maintenance and preservation, replacement in kind, and then replacement with a different material. We're always applying the SOI standards in each and every case. It's just they have to tell us why it's not feasible to do the first two parts of the hierarchy. And so, it wasn't maintained, I can't get that kind of material, or it's way too expensive, and so here is what I'm proposing to use. There are cases where some sort of decorative element originally was in redwood, and they found a lightweight cast plastic that can replicate the look, and that has been allowed in historic districts in Oakland. And so that is in, no way a like kind, yet it absolutely preserved the look of a historic home. And so that's what I'm asking the Planning Commission to start thinking about is we're not less or more strict with the standards. We're looking at the hierarchy, and when we get to replacement, we want that replacement to be as absolutely genuine as possible, and we need to have a reason for allowing a replacement. And so that's where I'm putting some burden back on the applicant. Why is it that you can't do steps 1 and 2? Why are you coming with a substitute? And that gives us the legally defensible position of, yeah, we let them use a plaster cast instead of wood because they couldn't get that wood or whatever the reason is. So it's a change in our thinking too.
Because we've been, sorry, Kathleen, go ahead. Because we've been using the SOI standards inconsistently and confusingly. Like, in the, 8 years that I've been on here, I think we've come a long way. And I'm really happy to see where we've landed because for a long time, sorry, I keep bringing up examples, but there was the example of the couple that wanted to put in essentially vinyl windows, but there was like wood chips in the vinyl, and somehow that was wood. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm kind of done with this. Like, I'm done with pretending that is meeting this strict SOI replacement.
But it does. It absolutely does because the look was the same by adding the
look was the
cladding.
same. The look was the
cladding.
same, and that's all that matters. The aesthetic. So
No, it's more. If you look at what I've outlined here, we're looking at reflectivity, texture. On a non-contributing, maybe all we look at is the shape of the window.
bingo. Yes, that's exactly what I'm
We want
saying.
it to keep sliding this
So
way
we
or
were
this
we were
way.
applying these strict, like I'm going to Pasadena style standards to houses that are not Pasadena homes, and so that's why I think when we get to contributing versus non-contributing ones, the contributing ones, precisely, you go down that replace in kind and then replace with a plastic thing that looks like it to maintain as hard as we can try to get that same look on those contributing ones. In the non-contributing ones, I think we have an easier standard that we don't have to roll around in these like 1,000-page SOI standards to figure it out. We just say, hey, is the look the same? Is it maintaining the aesthetic of the district? And is it, trying our best to keep the look of this district like as it has always been, as it has been?
And with with the plastic replacement, I mean that just sounds that makes me shudder.
Yeah, and that's fine.
But that's
because
why
we
it's
get
got to be
define
on
that.
the homeowner to tell us why
In a
does it have
contributing
to be
structure.
there?
Yes, in a contributing structure. And this
Yes.
is exactly the work that we've been doing is getting us to just this, is where we are holding ourselves to those standards because that was sort of the assumption or the routine that we were in, is to hold ourselves to these SOIs and really try to follow it. We don't have to. It's up to us how we.
I think you're then not giving us enough credit. We are following it.
But we don't have to.
No, we do. We
This is
absolutely
still-
do. The
I-
ordinance
I-
says we must.
This has been kind of a shifting, evolving process with with the SOI standards. I mean, a lot of these, like the new guidelines that have come out, I mean, this is within the last, I don't know, like 2016, 2017. So, it's not that.
Sustainability ones?
Yeah,
They were like
so it's-
2024. They're very
Oh,
new.
yeah, so it's
Yes.
not that, so these are, so, I mean, so working this out now, I mean, I think it's really appropriate and it's timely and it's not, I guess I'm just kind of hearing like, we've been applying this inconsistently. I mean, I'm trying to allow for some forgiveness because I think this has just been an evolving process that's still relatively new. And so,
And we don't have that much experience with it. You're right, it is an evolving process, and we're not exposed to what happens in other, like Oakland, where I guess they have a lot of this turnover, and so we don't hear of all these examples that, first blush is like, oh, are you kidding? Well, there are a lot of experts that, and this was in a seminar, I'm sorry I don't have a reference for it, but, it happens, but they had a justification, and that's what we need to put that on the applicant as opposed to the planning commission trying to create that justification in the moment of the site plan review. So have it lined up before we look at what they're proposing, facade elements, reflectivity, all these specificities that I put into the memo. These are from all these other jurisdictions that we've compared ourselves to.
I mean, I guess the other thing to kind of keep in mind too is we're developing this framework. I mean, as we go through that context statement process and the goals of these districts are better defined, I mean, that's going to help shape the framework. Again, I think that we're going to see some shifting and changing because, I mean, I've not heard this in any of the old meetings that I reviewed or anything, but, if it comes out that the property owners in these districts really, really want to always use the same materials, and not allow substitute materials, then we might have to respond to that. And I'm not just throwing that out there. I'm just saying, I mean, right now as a planning commission, I think that we're absolutely moving in the right direction, but, we're still lacking that information from the context statement, which we could have a little bit
That's
more.
an interesting question. First off, we haven't really had that uprising of interest, and I don't know how you impose it, given the fact that the SOI standards themselves say that replacement of using substitute materials is allowed, and we are to follow those standards. It's our preference. We can request, we can ask for them to do something different, but I don't know, how far can we push back on that? That's a really interesting concept.
I guess I had a question I wanted to throw out for your thoughts. We've sometimes had properties before us in historic districts that were so modified over the years, a real hodgepodge. So for illustration, just if you would consider up the street on Main Street, there was that building that had been used as a German beer pub and now a Mexican restaurant. That has three components. Inside, amazingly, is from the 1800s, these large plaster rock cubes. And then there's the front, at one time had octagonal shaped windows that, who knows where that came from. So you've got different kinds of architecture, and obviously the section that's been added behind it for a car wash. How would you handle those properties that have been modified?
Well, you're putting it all. How would you handle it? That's it's a difficult question, and actually think more because we're working with a residential district. So I think what you're talking about is a commercial building.
And I did it for illustration because we've all seen it.
So if a house.
If I refer to the one on
So
Clay Street,
how do
many
you think
people
we
would
should
remember the one on
proceed?
Clay Street? My answer is, as an illustration, there's one at the very end of Main Street where Broadway starts. It's a large warehouse. Amazingly, most of the structure is from the 1800s. It's beautiful inside, very interesting. And on the street side, because of crumbling over the years, they put in cinder blocks. But those folks have made modifications that are consistent, blend in, if you will, with the predominant structure. They didn't go to the expense of tearing down the cinder blocks. And
So as far as, I think I know the structure you're talking about, and I'm really impressed with the work they're doing, but
one that's
as far
becoming
as,
solar?
how does that fit into our framework?
that's the question, is how would you handle it?
How would you handle it? You're putting everything on us, but I'm looking for some answers from
I
you,
wanted to be
Kirk.
generous and get your feedback, but I think that our standards necessarily will change depending upon how much the building's been modified. Residences almost always will change bathrooms many times and kitchens many times. So that they do go through, porches get opened and closed and so on. So I think our standards.
I think that's why there's still value in having the planning commission look at each one of these in context as opposed to moving to a ministerial
Right.
approval
Sure.
like we discussed early on.
So you try to gauge, in answer to your question, I guess my stab at it would be that you look for a predominant structure that's present and have it conform to that. So if it's been very exacting to begin with, then you could be more exacting. But when it's been very loose, then you would go with the design of that period.
And that is not a residential, right? So that goes back to what I touched on earlier, where when we are defining contributing versus non-contributing within the residential districts, I think it would also be valuable for the town to classify. We have those inventories, but there's a lot of different buildings on them, to actually classify contributing buildings within the city in general, not just
just
within
use
the
those
districts.
two.
That would be, I think, a
I
long-term
use
goal.
those two only because, that are commercial, only because we're all familiar with them.
Yeah. So when you talk about the structures being modified, that goes back to what I said, we need a baseline. We don't have one right now. So if we were to take pictures today, June 8th, 2026, and say, this is the city of Placerville's baseline, in 50 years, we have, just like 40 years ago, they wrote this ordinance, but we have no information on what these houses looked like at the time, what's been done to them. We have no way of knowing that, right? Except for maybe Google Street View wasn't around, right? We can't even go to archived web images. And so I think that's why I am a proponent of getting a visual baseline of these 4 districts in order to, in 50 years, have something to reference so that if it has been modified, we say, hey, actually, this is what it looked like. And again, if it's a non-contributing, if the work's done illegally, that would be something that the city has to decide how they want to address. Do we make them go back to what our baseline was, or do we work with them on what it is? The guy that put the siding up on the house on Spring Street, and then we had him take it down, right, because he did it without approval. It significantly changed the aesthetic of it. That's a city, that goes to the context statement, that goes to all of this. The city, it's a very vaguely defined priority that we're working on here. And then we've, over the years, tried to implement standards to the best of our knowledge, and with changing commissioners and things like that, that has made it just kind of willy-nilly. And I think what this is all doing is formalizing all of this, and in line with that is documenting what is there, so that when we're applying these different ideas of standards, which we are literally making now, so what we've done in the past and what we can do in the future don't have to be the same, that we have a way to talk about our reasoning. I think it would give us the reasoning that the legal justification, where we've expressed our priorities, we've expressed our expectations, and we've made it available to homeowners. None of that has happened right now. And so by doing that within this context, I think those questions that you're suggesting will be answered by having a formal, accessible, and well-defined method.
So do you recommend that we add to the recommendations that as we're waiting to update the historic inventory, that we recommend photo documenting all of these historic districts
Yeah,
I have brought that up
Yeah.
before. It was not
Never-
well
never-
received. I mean, just in the terms of cost and like I literally was like, I will walk these and snap a picture because it's only the front we're doing this, it's only
Right.
street view. So we have to remember the context of what we're working with is very limited on these houses. I mean, in theory, you could rip down the whole back of the house and like would you keep the street view stuff, and they would be within their rights of how we've defined what our priorities are. So I think that. Yes, we need to, I think we do need to do that. That, like I said, this is my dream of like what would make it like a beautiful, perfect process in town. It was not well received because of the basically saying an expert needs to do that. And an expert needs to document, list, and I agree and disagree.
It would be a formal.
It would be a formal thing, a formal process, not me snapping photos on my iPhone and being like, here's our baseline, even though I think it could be fairly simply done in that way. Like, let's just get a photo. I even suggested downloading Google Street images, right? So forget going and
That's what
photographing.
eBay.
So I had suggested that in prior meeting to the city council it went here somewhere. I was like, let's just even forget walking the street, forget hiring an expert, download what it is on Google Street View today, and let's have that be our baseline. Like, and someone just needs to sit there and download each property in the historic districts, and that would give us a baseline without having an expert. Again, this just wasn't well received in terms of priority, and I think was complicated to more than it needs to be. So, does that make sense? Okay.
So I do agree with you, Amy, on that we shouldn't be putting this onus on the owners. It could be a recommendation that they come forward with the infeasibility of using in-kind materials. But I also think that, over time, there's going to be a variety of different planning commissioners, planning department staff that have expertise that could contribute to the conversation in that way. And I feel that asking the owners who don't have the experience to come up with a amateur justification is probably going to push some people away from even like seeking a site plan review, especially if it's going to take extra time and we might see additional undisclosed
Which has
modifications.
also been my point from the start, that if we make this difficult or we make it really hard, people will not maintain these homes. They
Yeah.
will go decrepit and they will get demolished like the one on Cedar Ravine.
Or they'll just
So
remodel them however they want.
exactly. And so this is why I've always gone back to, we need a very simple, like I said, download the Street View, have the context, look at it. Is the siding the same size? Okay, great. Let's let you do it. Because I think the woman who came at the last meeting with the big picture window with the divided, she had come years ago, and we really applied the standards really hard on her, and it made her not do. And I know I've interacted with her socially in the meantime, right? And she didn't do anything for it, where water's still leaking into that home because we were so strict on applying these standards to her that it was easier for her to just not do anything. Well, now that home could be crumbling. It could be, now, I think she has to build boxes or whatever to maintain the structure of it.
And for her to come before us.
I got to push back on this. I don't see, how is that an undue burden for them to give us a statement as to why they feel they need to use the substitute material? And they, they already have in mind, like she came back, she had pictures of the windows.
You
Why
were
is that an
referring to
undue
the
burden?
character defining features, right? Not the justification
Yeah,
for the substitute
they don't have to
materials.
do that. You're right. That's
I think
on
we have to
staff and on us. But
correct that in here.
Yeah, I am very uncomfortable with the work that we've had to do to justify our decisions in the moment, creating that kind of finding, kind of not putting words, but pulling words out of finally they'll tell us what the problem is.
Well, I am curious too, for staff's opinion on this, of whether or not you would receive like pushback if you were to say, well, I don't think this is going to get approved, but you could go before them. Or would you rather have like, no, this is a requirement and you have to get it done before it goes to the meeting?
I think the latter, because I really wouldn't want to discourage someone from trying to improve their property but having, knowing what all the factors are and what they need to provide in order to get to a successful outcome, that they really need to know what's expected of them.
And do you, so am I being unreasonable asking the average applicant to come up to the desk there at the city and say, you know, my house is in the historic district and I want to, you know, replace windows? Is it really an undue burden to ask them to write a statement, submit that and say, the reason is I can't find them, I can't afford them, you know, they're going to keep the look, you know, whether it goes this way or that way, but, you know, giving us something to build a finding on is what I'm looking for here.
So it was mentioned earlier in tonight's meeting, is people do not know they're in the historic district, most people, and they get caught. And then they come in and they're just trying to, you know, do the right thing. So I think that there's a level of frustration because I've had so many people saying, I didn't know. You know, there should be something recorded.
Well, I want to get to that under recommendation 1. And
Right.
I absolutely agree with you on, you know, we need to make this so obvious to the citizens of
I've heard it
Placerville.
over and over again. And so, like I said, I think
So let's say, you know, you're in a historic district, and so you want to change out your windows, they can come up to the desk, and I just want to know if that's a reasonable addition to the application package. We asked them to, you know, tell us about their property and what they're proposing to do, to add a statement. The reason I wanted to use this substitute material is, you know, is this. It's affordable, it's more lightweight, I can install it myself, giving us the evidence we need to write a good finding.
And I think like the last two brought forward, they did provide statements and cost or availability had been kind of primary for both of them.
Well, I'm sure staff can kind of help them in the moment, you know, as they're submitting their application.
Yeah, if we're available, I mean, I have 2 staff members at this point, and I had one on vacation 2 days last week, so it was me and my code official. So sometimes I'm not available, and I'm the only planner. So if I'm there, I will absolutely help them, and I do spend the time that is necessary. If I am at the counter, they have my full attention. If I'm not at the counter, then it's struggling, but it's, like I said, for the
And
most
sometimes any application may take more than one trip in to work with staff to get the application complete.
Yes, and so one of the things that I have been not accepting incomplete applications, so I just kicked one back a couple weeks ago for a conditional use permit. And because I said, I just can't, you need to have a complete submittal. It's something I've been talking with other departments about, is making sure that we're reviewing for completeness before we take it in. So that's kind of something that has been a focus of late, and it's something, you know, DSD staff will be looking at as we start looking at applications. We also have our new fees going into effect on July 13th. So all of our, not our application, but all our requirement pages have the fees listed in them. So I have to go in and change all of our applications. I'm taking the fees out. They can look on the fee schedule. But I'm looking at how we can change what the requirements are, like having them provide the surrounding property owner labels and kind of do more of the work. I don't have the staff to do it for them. And, you know, our resources are thin, but that's something that I'm looking at. And so if it's something that we can incorporate into the historic design review application, I'm happy to do that. The fees changed on that as well. So like I said,
Yeah, and I'm sure you're not aware of how we've struggled over the years with applicants who proposed a material that, you know, maybe the commission thought was suitable, but we wanted to make sure the city was in a defensible position of why that substitute was being allowed. And it took, actually, that guy was in here 3 times to that little house in Cedar Ravine, and really we just needed him to show in his original application, it just costs too much. It's, you know, it's a modest little house, and this is what it looks like, and I want to use this, you know, suitable material, that similar color and texture, but it's, you know, and it's more affordable, and that's really what our decision, our finding had to come down to, is it was an affordability thing.
Right. And
So that's what I'm trying to avoid, is that, you know, the people having to come to planning commission more than one time.
yeah,
I,
I would rather it be one time, but I do agree that if they know what they need to provide, one thing on the applications I'm going to require for commercial applications is a statement of operations. You know, I need them to explain their business, how many employees they're going to have, what their hours of operation are, you know, how many customers, da-da-da. This is their business. These are their homes. They need to paint the picture for us.
Exactly, exactly.
And I think a lot of the stuff that you're talking about will be addressed first between the contributing and non-contributing. I know I keep going back to that, but I think that when a contributing person comes in, a contributing property comes in, it will be held to the standards that you're talking about with the, here's why I can't use wood or whatever, okay? Here's why I can't exactly replace this with XYZ. And then
yeah.
in the non-contributing ones, and this goes back to the website being made more accessible and palatable, so that Carol's not answering these questions, they can find that. And like the City of Whittier one that I've talked about, there's really awesome resources on there that are not complex, that describe what the goal is for the non-contributing properties. And I think you defined it very well here in number 2 on page 5, what we expect you to do. So if you're coming at us with a facade element change, then they should be similar in character to the original. If you're coming with siding, the elements of the material being replaced should follow the same dimensions, thickness, and shadow lines. I think that's as simple of information as people need. The roof, it needs to be a similar size, it needs to be a similar dimension, it's not altering the roof line. If it does that stuff and they're requesting it, then that's a higher level of review that will just naturally happen because we're looking at actually altering it. But if they're coming in just wanting to replace the wood
A
shingle.
simple replacement, yes.
Yes, in non-contributing. And so then the contributing ones, and this is why I think it's so important, because I think we're dealing with a majority non-contributing. I think right here, this tells people, okay, cool, I can substitute my windows and doors as long as I keep the same pattern, proportions, and finish of existing window sash style. Okay, great, I'm gonna go shop for windows. It doesn't matter the material because I'm in a non-contributor, as long as it has, if it starts with 6 crosses, it ends with 6 crosses, whatever it's made of, in non-contributing ones. And that's why I think this is such a vital, important distinction that needs to happen in our districts, because then all of the complex, hey, tell me why you can't, tell me why it's economically infeasible, doesn't matter on non-contributing ones as long as they maintain the aesthetic. And I think it's described really well here. It could be fleshed out a little bit more, thrown on the website. That website page with the maps should have a just menu of information for people to access that is written in plain English, that is easily findable, that just drops down an FAQ, hey, I want to do siding. Okay, click here, and it talks about what our siding requirements are for non-contributing things. We could have a whole page devoted to contributing ones with strict adherence. You need to come in and you need to have the same in-kind, or you need to tell us why this isn't feasible. Tell them what they need to tell us. But I don't think that that's going to be the case with 95% of these structures.
And as Kirk pointed out, you know, a lot of the structures have already been modified. So even if they were at one time would have been a contributing, or maybe they still are a contributing one, they've already had modifications done to them. And so now that modification, it's a leaky window or whatever, it needs to be changed. So again, we're looking at everything in context and making our findings and approving as.
I just a couple follow-up questions. Amy referred to a particular property, and I didn't get the address or know which one you were referring to. This is where someone came in and thought afterwards that we've been too strict, and it prompted her to not be able to.
Oh, the woman that just came in last meeting with the picture window up on Sacramento
She's
Street.
close to your house.
Yes.
Oh,
I can't remember what her name was.
I can't either off the top of my head.
the window was too.
The divided light windows?
She came in the very beginning of my, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
of my tenure, and I didn't fully understand all of the I was very new when she came in, and we ended up saying no to her application because of material, and it was, so then now that we've sort of found our way a little bit more on why what we want from people and why we're asking that of them. She was able to come back and say, hey, it's a divided light window. It's got the same dimensions. It's got the same look. It's going to look like the same thing. But we're no longer wrestling with the materials, and we'll wrestle even less with those materials as we build out this expectations that we have of the different structures within the
So
district.
she's saying it's leaking.
A long time, I mean, that was, you replace a window, she was replacing the window because it was leaking and destroying the structure, right? So it was leaking into the wood of the structure below and actually disintegrating. And so her goal was to replace the window to stop the disintegration. We said no because it wasn't a wood window or whatever it was. And then she just came back at the last meeting and it was approved that she could replace the window because it shared the same look, had the same aesthetic, but stopped the leaking and held the structure of the house together.
The other question I wanted to ask Carol is, sometimes I've seen these applications before us, they look well prepared, various degrees of professionalism. What kind of guidance do you give them when they come knocking at your counter?
Well, right now I rely on the application and the requirements, so that's where I would really like to beef it up.
The application needs
It needs help, but so
yeah.
do a lot of our other applications. I mean, I'm getting stuff, basically in the back of a napkin, and, it's,
And it's because it's so complex and so loaded. There's so much on there that the layperson, I think, will just try their best at it. But it's like 13 pages. It's a lot to digest, and it's tiny. I mean, so I think that refining that application will also solve a lot of these problems, because if you ask a person in normal language with normal options that anyone can understand, I think that will help applications go a long way before they get to you, and you have to then slice and dice them in the context of this outdated application.
right. And her name was Lori Volker. The other one on Clay Street, I mean, it's obvious she used AI to prepare her application, but I mean,
It was great.
I mean, it looked very good, and so, I mean, that's options that people have now, nowadays. But, you got to check your work. But,
And that was kind of an above and beyond. I mean, that was a beautiful application, but that's not going to be our norm. You know what I mean?
No.
And so I think, again, making it really accessible for people to go on the website, get the information they need, put together the best packet they can, not come to you with just a napkin, but give them the tools to not come to you with a napkin. Do you know what I mean? I think that will go a long way in solving a lot of these application issues and burden on Carol.
Well, I'd like to, so it's after 6:30. I think we're in general agreement, but I'd like to get your thoughts on how you want to move forward. So we've hashed out framework, the proposed framework. I get the sense that you're generally in agreement with what's been drafted, with a few updates, such as a practical matter, using current photos and descriptions to update our inventory, ahead of doing a formal update. And what else do I want to make sure that we add? To create a baseline of the structures. Pretty much that's about the only change that I've heard from the group on this draft.
So I did have one recommendation, however, it's been brought up that might not be a popular concept, so I would like to discuss if possible. Why don't we want to list color?
Color?
Yeah.
The city just hasn't. We talk about using earth tones, and this has come up repeatedly, and it's just not something we talk about in our guidelines, and certainly not in the ordinance. We don't really talk about in the residential areas.
I do feel like it's come up a few times when we discuss it here, though. So I wonder if it's worth adding something about maybe trying to identify the original color of the house or having staff list what were the colors common of that time period.
I think it's tricky because one, you don't want someone who lives in a red house to only have to live in a red house, right? Like, you know, that's not cool. And but I think I think the color is enough in the earth tones and the color palette described to avoid a polka dot house, for example. Okay, so I think that we have enough coverage where if someone comes to us and wants to paint it 50 different colors, that we can be like, that doesn't fit into the palette that we've described as our priority, the earth tones. But then going further than that, I think you're kind of stepping on people's toes. If the original color was, who knows? That's hard to determine. Right. And then, color photos didn't exist, right? So you're starting to really get into a hole that you don't really necessarily need to be in, as long as they're not painting it like a clown house, which is a goal, would be, you know what I mean? Like a described goal, I think or like a clear goal that we would want not to have.
That's also, part of our responsibility is protecting the aesthetic of the neighborhood.
Right.
But I think we all struggle with the fact that, and it's just difficult for the city, since we don't have a palette, we don't have a context statement. Maybe a specialist could come in if the city decides to go that route to develop the era of significance and the context statement. That historian might be able to say, at the same time, in this era, we know that this is the palette that was typically used. Then the city could rely on that, but we're not the experts. We don't have that information today. And I sympathize. I think I was like a black and white house or the red house. Anyway, it just comes up every once in a while
as long as it's not offensive, I don't think we have to worry about it
so
too much.
we just have to use our good judgment that they aren't negatively impacting the rest of the district.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm just wondering if it should be something that's listed, like for the consideration. If they're going to be coming
think
before
again
us
on that,
anyway,
Well,
then we
let's just
start
leave it open
asking,
to an expert. If that's what the expert comes through, if they decide to go with an expert to develop the context statement, then that might be part of the package that they offer.
And that could be as simple as on the menu that I'm talking about making on the website, when you can click on siding or fencing, like Carol's talked about. The fencing isn't really well defined. There's a great fencing. I was just looking at the Cameron Park CSD website. They have an architectural review committee, and they have a whole fencing thing. And City of Whittier, same thing, fencing with pictures of examples and things like that. So I think that a drop-down menu for each major component that people typically are changing: windows, fences, siding, roofing, doors, whatever. Okay, so I think as long as but I think paint could be on there, and it could be as simple of a statement as Placerville's priorities are to maintain earth tones.
Right.
And earth has lots of tones, right? You could argue, yeah. I mean, there's bright pink flowers outside.
Right.
So I think if we just keep it that simple, and unless it becomes a problem where everyone on the street wants to do something that is just considered wacky by us, then we address it. But I think just, again, having a drop down of painting, you may, painting is not up to you, but in more formal terms, pick a color within earth tones. That's our priority, and then see what it comes to us. But don't overthink that. Don't start digging out a problem that doesn't really exist. People don't necessarily usually come to us with these wild painting ideas. And I think, again, until that's a problem, I would think a simple statement letting people know. You don't need to be worried about the paint color that you pick as long as it goes within earth tones and you show us what the color is. Again, these are questions that can be answered by fixing our website and making it more accessible and having very clear, I know I always talk about the City of Whittier one, but it's because I love how their drop downs, there's a lot of them, but each one has some of them have one sentence, and it's beautiful because you get the answer. So it's not, okay, read 50 paragraphs and hopefully you figured it out. People don't do that. And so I loved how their layout was so basic, meeting times, just, as an example, and who we are, what our mission is as the Planning Commission, and this and this and this. If you haven't looked at that one, I think it's a really great example of having a really basic but detailed approach to disseminating this information in an evergreen way. It's written once and it's done, right? It's not Carol answering the question when every single person comes in and she's retooling the wheel every time. It's here's this, here's your fencing options, here's your roofing options, and like what our priorities are. And they don't have to be, it's like incredibly detailed or specific or materials, even. It just give them goals and contexts of what we're asking. And I think that most applications that come in will meet those.
I agree with you for sure. My thought only being like,
Why?
just someone goes onto the website and doesn't see painting listed as a priority. They're like, cool, I can paint my house whatever color I want. And
That
then
would be a shortcoming of our website.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't want to mislead you about consensus. I asked questions because I wanted to learn the views of other people and the like. But on something like going around taking snapshots, I do have lots of reservations. Number one, as an illustration. But also, I think another approach to take is we've already have an instrument. So if it's to report about the status is there's a substantial work product that is being drafted, number one. And two, a lot of research has been done, again, about other historic standards in other communities. So that's something to report. I would think that based on what's known now, somebody could start off with a draft of a context statement so that you start to see these ideas in context, substantial and so on.
I think that's a city council priority, though. Like, I think they need to, the city council is the one that implemented this ordinance and set it as a priority. We evaluate and enforce it, but I think they need to come up with that. They either need to decide if someone there is going to write it, or if they're going to write it cohesively, or if they're going to hire someone to write it. I don't think that what you said earlier is totally true. We shouldn't necessarily be doing this work. We are telling them what we are encountering and what we think would help to clarify that.
And
right?
also make it defensible. Hiring an outside expert is really, I think the clearest, strongest way to go. City council could take that work on themselves, but I think that if we tried to do that, I just don't see how that's really robust, legally robust. I think that anyone could challenge that because we aren't experts. We have a lot of practical experience. We can evaluate. That's our job to do that. We look at evidence and we make our determinations as planning commissioners. But to go out and do something at that level, it really does require someone with a lot of expertise, a credentialed expert who knows, architecture, who knows, palettes. That's really not the work for us to take on. We could do a review based on our knowledge of the area, but for us to do the actual de novo writing of the context statement, I don't think that's work for the Planning Commission. I feel very strongly about that. But that's up to City Council to decide how they want to move.
It takes three people. If there's no other support for it, it won't get done. But the recommendation of three of the previous members, Mr. Friend, Carter, and Smith, was that you have public hearings, so that you have these things. For example, in the very beginning, there was a lot of discussion about dates and time. Do you know that the Historic Heritage Association has another weekend workshop coming up soon? Amazingly, on houses that were built in, I guess it's the 60s and 70s.
Well, now,
Well, the point,
it's getting late. I need you to focus in on what's at hand.
and I just
So
did.
we have, we're looking at a response to City Council, and you're telling us, it's really interesting, and I'm glad that there's a lot of work being done on, history in Placerville, but please tie it, I don't see how that has relevance to what's before us right now. We're talking about responding to City Council on this recommendation 4, and honestly, what I'm looking for is, I would like to entertain a motion to move forward. We really need to finish our discussion on recommendation 4, and so we can talk. We all have ideas on recommendation 1, and I'd like to move on to that. We've been at this for almost 2 hours, so I'm sorry, Kirk, our meetings run too long, and I'm not really sure where you're going with that, but
It was real simple.
what I'd like to, I'd like to entertain a motion to move forward with this. Do the rest of you feel like this is what we want to present to City Council? The draft, I can add the changes that were mentioned as far as real-time updating the inventory, and then, of course, the recommendation at the bottom to take on the context statement and update the inventory. How do the rest of you feel? I'd like to have a motion on the floor to consider.
I think there was one small edit just that came out of our discussion today under the standards for evaluating the substitute materials, because it does read that we have that the SPR applicant would provide a description of the character defining features.
Oh, where is that?
Page 4,
Thank you.
the bottom of page 4. Yeah, and I think, so I think
It could easily be clarified.
it could, but I also think that all of this could be a little bit clarified by delineating non-contributing and contributing structure expectations. And so I think that that is relevant to contributing structures. And the rest of it more non-contributing. So I think it could be restructured, I guess is what I'm saying. We can edit that simply. I did not take time to edit this one. I thought overall it was pretty good and I wanted to see sort of where the conversation went. But I think having this a little bit edited to be flushed out between the priorities between contributing and non-contributing, and then also list next steps from the city council. We need you to write a context statement, which is vital. I mean, they are in every other historic district, and we
Okay,
don't have.
so I guess what, I'm still looking for that motion. We can either send this draft along, or we can send a message to City Council that we're working on a draft, and then we can possibly set deadlines on everyone submitting edits to Ms. Kendrick for incorporation and discussion at a subsequent meeting. But
move
let
that
City
we-
Council know that we are moving forward. We have identified elements of a framework, and we want to refine that before we share it with City Council.
I move that we forward to the City Council a report that we've made substantial progress. We've done a lot of work. And
We're talking about recommendation 4 right now?
I'd like to do some edits on it. I think that it's
So can I
close.
have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we do edits, and that might be a little tricky for me personally in the context that I'm in. But I can take a stab at it tomorrow, maybe.
No,
and-
there's no rush,
Yeah,
actually.
but for
So-
me
So what could be
personally-
our deadline? I mean, we can take comments from the public
True.
at any time.
Yeah.
I don't know what our agendas look like for the rest of the summer, but we could have an update, schedule an update, maybe, so we're in June, July, August. So, 3 months to have it, have the framework edited and ready to, put into use.
I believe that would be the September 1st meeting. I know, let's see, I know our next meeting is heavy. So September 1st, I have the general plan policy document review, potentially a conditional use permit for a theater use, a Clay Street window replacement, historic design review, and potentially having the city attorney do conflict of interest and Brown Act training. But, I mean, there's still time that other items could be added for our next meeting. I just kind of want to give you guys a heads up that we will have the Sotheby's appeal regarding formula business, and we'll have the last housing opportunity overlay, that site that was established in the sixth cycle housing element. We have received significant comments from the public, so I do believe that we will have a large amount of audience participating. We have 2 other items, which is the Mackinac extension of time. It's their final 6 months. And then a general plan amendment and zone change, which we continued from the previous meeting regarding the fish house.
What about August?
August, so the first meeting is canceled due to National Night Out. And we haven't looked at rescheduling. If that's something that you'd like me to work with community services on and trying to get this room, I can certainly do that, but we don't have the second meeting, and the first meeting was canceled.
And we have a meeting for the 18th of August?
No,
We don't.
that's what I'm saying, if you want me to look into that and see if we have availability. It's kind of the second Tuesday has been taken up by another committee, but I can work with community services and see if there's anything that we can work out.
So okay, so then the next available would be the October 6th
September 1st.
regular meeting, as opposed to calling a special meeting. Okay, let's go for October 6th then.
Yeah, because I made a motion to make some edits to
Well,
this.
mine was already on the table, so
Yeah.
you want to just,
I didn't hear anybody actually make a motion, so Amy, would you like to make a motion? I didn't say, please say I move to,
Okay.
to do something.
Yeah, but yes, it didn't get a second. I move that we work on further defining the next steps and recommendations of the memo to City Council regarding recommendation 4.
Okay, and a date certain to have this done?
By a date certain of September 1st, 2026.
September or October?
I believe the chair said October.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said September 1st. Sorry.
September 1st would be the next.
October
6th.
6th, 2026.
Okay, so we have a motion to report to City Council that we're working on this, and we would like to have our next draft for consideration on the 6th of October. Is that the way?
Yes, and I also, I don't know if I need a second or before I can still talk, but I think we can still work on this memo that you wrote, the cover memo, and send that to them to give them a general update. I added some detail on recommendation 1 that I had done and fleshed out 2 and 3, and fleshed out the final paragraph to at least give them something. And then in the first paragraph, we could just add the line, a report of our recommendations for recommendation 4 will be forthcoming, anticipated by October 2026.
was there a second to your motion?
I'll second that.
Okay.
So we have a motion from Amy and a second from Melissa. All right. So this is to, I'm not clear on how we can get the memo to City Council. They're looking for an update. So,
They are, so if you would like to do a letter that I can provide to them, or, I think it would be best to have something come from the commission instead of staff writing it.
So I agree in principle with what you're proposing. I'm looking at, so here we are in June. We have a full agenda on the 16th, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Would there be room on July 7th for a quick approval of an update memo?
I don't have any other items at this point, so, we're kind of looking at that. We want to make sure that we're bringing, having a fuller agenda so that we're utilizing our resources. But
For the
right now-
7th?
Yeah, I don't have any items for the 7th.
Can we touch on the memo tonight? The one pager?
We can try. What I'd like to do, okay. I think any memo I would like to have the Planning Commission consider. So our next meeting is, okay, so you want to rewrite the memo now? Okay.
I was able to edit the memo not long before this meeting, and so I wasn't able to send it in after receiving the packet. So what I did is,
Okay, all right, so the motion is to make
oh,
further
it's-
edits and have that prepared by 10:06.
yes, on the 8 page
On the first,
regarding recommendation 4,
Regarding the framework
of
recommendation.
recommendation 4.
Okay.
that
I
be-
would like to add a friendly amendment to your motion that in order to make all the edits by the, and I would like, all edits can go to you, Ms. Kendrick, and then to me to incorporate and finalize?
Correct. If
Okay,
the
'cause
commission,
I don't want-
please send your
But
edits.
everything needs to go through city staff.
Right, to make sure that we're not violating the Brown Act. If it's something where we can get it on June 16th, I don't see an issue with that. I know we have two controversial items, so one, like I said, will bring crowds.
Okay, so I'm requesting all edits be submitted to Ms. Kendrick for distribution, then to me to incorporate, September 8th. I think that will give me plenty of time to then rework the framework part of the letter and then get that incorporated for Planning Commission consideration at the next meeting. So I'd like to have all those. Would you mind adding that to your motion?
Yes, that for the 1-page memo?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, for the framework.
framework.
Oh, okay.
Not for the response to city council. We're going to break everything apart.
Okay, sorry. Yes, I will add that to my
Okay.
motion.
So edits due by September 8th. Okay.
I will second your amendment.
Thank you.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. So I look forward to seeing your comments on the framework portion of the memo. Now, before we move on to the edits to the memo to City Council, I'd like to combine information that you worked on here for Framework 4 after discussion to the framework to recommendation number 1.
Yes. So I flushed out in the memo, and again, I'm sorry, I didn't have time to edit the 8-page one, but I will take time. But I did edit the 1-page one, and now with the discussion tonight, I don't think I was going to recommend that we flush out, are we ready to move to this?
Recommendation 1?
So on the 1-page memo, it starts, members of the Placerville Planning Commission submit this memo and attachments to update you on activities taken by Planning Commission members pursuant to your direction received via memo from then City Manager Cleve Morris dated January 7th, 2025. Then it's everything that you wrote. I had the words flush out on there after that. I think we could just add a line saying, a report of our recommendations will be forthcoming, anticipated by October 2026.
Wait, so we're looking at item 5.1.2, not the second attachment to 5.111.
Oh, are we looking at page 8? Is that what we're looking at right now? Yeah. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So I didn't have time to edit that one. I think that what I would do is, so I guess I kind of wrote what I would write on that on the 1-page memo. And so I'll read what I added to the memo, but I think that could be fleshed out in the page 8 of that other
So
one.
let me make sure I'm on the right document.
Basically your cover letter. I did more editing in the cover letter. I didn't edit on that other page, but I think what I edited on my cover letter could go into page 8 of that.
5.11.
Yes, 5.11. Thank you. I just have a bunch of numbers at the top and I can't follow. So this is what I added. So it says, and on the memo I'm talking about, but this is just what I wrote in general. A great deal of work has also taken place on recommendation 1, improve community knowledge of the historic districts, primarily by Amy Leper with assistance from city staff. This includes the rollout of a detailed map clearly identifying all properties within the 4 historic districts, which was not possible prior to the map page's creation. Remaining goals within this recommendation include the build-out of the map page as a homepage for all things historic districts, making it more simple and accessible for homeowners to navigate the historic review application and approval process. Examples of strong processes in other California cities have been identified and can be mimicked on the city site with relative ease. Additionally, work has been done to identify general historical information scattered across the current city website with the goal of creating a more robust historic landing page, highlighting the unique features of Placerville in a palatable manner. The other 2 suggestions of this priority, installing signs identifying historic districts and sending flyers to homeowners in districts notifying them that they live in one, have not yet been completed. The commission still feels these would be helpful long-term goals as homeowners consistently communicate that they were not aware that these districts existed until they reached out for permitted updates. So I think that is what I would edit page 8 to talk about in terms of the bullet points referenced in Cleve's memo and what has been done so far and what needs to be done.
I almost feel like we could just send that.
So this is
cover
what,
letter
yes, that's what I,
add and
that's what I think. So I think if we just add a line, I think this cover letter could get sent out sooner than later to give them the update that they're requesting without, hammering down everything. I could easily add this, a flush out page 8 of 5.11 with this information, but have it be in here too, and not talk about item 4 yet, and flesh out how we want to approach that. Or I think, I don't want to overcomplicate this either, because I think it's a lot less work than it sounds like to get this all done. I also added in the memo, recommendations 2 and 3, review historic inventory and consider revising or adopting a new historic district ordinance, have not moved forward significantly. The commission feels the most important priority with regards to inventory is for the city to identify its contributing properties within each of the districts, allowing the city to hold them to higher standards of review and approval. Efforts should also be made to ensure that homeowners of these priorities are aware of this classification. I didn't go farther than that, but basically saying that 2 and 3, we haven't really addressed it. 1, because the city council said that wasn't really their priority. And 2, because we just haven't done as much in that. But I think the contributing properties being identified actually do contribute to those recommendations. Is what I'm saying making sense? Okay. And so I think that maybe fleshing that out just a little bit more to say that what we're going to do. And then in the other memo, the 5.11, having some specific next steps at the end of it of what we expect from city council and what we still have remaining, which is very little, actually. I mean, honestly, this is fleshed out really well, and I think is really a culmination of, 3 years or something of talking about this. And so then in the last paragraph, I just tightened up the language in talking about I said, Commissioner Stratton took on the duties of tracking progress to those who volunteered to work on the recommendations. We feel that good progress has been made, especially since the Development Services Department has had 3 directors, added 2 new commission members, and reduced meeting frequency to once per month while conducting this review process, in addition to addressing regular planning matters since the memo was issued. The commission is hopeful that dedicated resources can continue to be allotted to finishing this work, as once it is in place, it should be final unless new priorities are identified. That was just kind of my stab at rounding it out. Again, I did do this later on in the day today, so it was sort of drafty, but I thought pretty comprehensive. And I think it could be, I can share this and people can decide what maybe additions we could have to it. And I think this could go out to city council without a robust additional discussion at a meeting, and at least give them the update they're asking for. Does this sound right? Is it making sense?
Yes.
Okay. I think this memo could be just honed a little bit more, and then go to city council. They get the update that they're requesting. Secondary to that update 5.111 to just flesh out a little bit more based on our conversations tonight and make it really palatable for the city council to understand what the expectations are of them and what the expectations and what our understanding of the processes are, or will be going forward, I should say.
Well, do we have time on the 16th to do a quick review and approval of a cover memo?
Sure, I can add that on to the,
Yeah, just this memo, because I I'd like to take a look at all of your edits, and would it be possible, Carol, to circulate a change through you? So the edits go to you, you send them to me, I reformat, or I edit the amendment, send it to you, and you can redistribute it? Or does it need to be always agendized so the public can comment on it? Since this is an update to the city council, I'm just trying to make sure I capture, so we address their concerns and we capture everybody's ideas.
Right. So everyone can send their comments to me, and then I can send them out to the group. But if, being the chair, if you're going to be updating that memo, then you can do that and get that out to me. The agenda goes out, it's going to go out on Thursday or Friday. Right now, I have 2 staff reports done. I have 2 more to do. So,
Right, so, so the turnaround would be pretty quick. So, yeah, just, I'll take that on since I've, as chair, I'll redraft a memo just to city council, updating them on our work so far, and then tonight especially. So please send your copy to,
Yes, I will.
and
Because
anyone else with comments on, and just, at this point, just limit it to things you want to tell city council as part of our update. And then we'll have that for your approval on, just a quick approval on the 16th, so it'll be
Okay.
part of your package. One thing I don't want to, in that memo, don't really want to talk about any of the other recommendations, 2 or 3. They're, these are low priority, and we haven't worked on them. So let's focus our comments on recommendation 4 and then recommendation 1. I did want to take a little more time talking about recommendation 1 because in reading this, I think we should emphasize to city council how important signage at the entryways to historic districts would be. And I'd like to bring that up. So if you could do that, highlight that in your memo.
or in this 8th page, I think is a good place to do that, of the,
So we still want to talk about, I would prefer to keep it recommendation 1, recommendation 4, and our progress. But we talked to an applicant recently who, again, I had no idea they were in a historic district. And you've done so much work on the website, but if we had physical signage, maybe with a QR code or something like that, so you can't miss it. People might not, if you don't know it exists, you might not go to the website looking for it.
oh, 100%. I'm in huge favor of the physical signs.
Yeah, so
Again,
I really
it was
want to-
something that I brought up multiple times.
I want
in
to
the
bring
city.
that up in prominence in,
And again, city
in the
council's
recommendation.
response, yes, I agree. I think it's a huge priority, at
how do
least.
the rest of you feel about that? Do you feel that it's important to have physical signage installed outside of our districts?
I do. Even if, someone were to go tour a home and not see it right away, it would at least bring the community knowledge up. You talk to your neighbors like, oh, did you get that approved? Oh, what are you planning?
And the response from city council when that specifically was brought up was there was no money, and that it would be a good task actually for some of the organizations that you work with, Kirk, fundraising. Like, I don't know whether the money goes for the historic home tour. I don't know where any of that money goes. But this was something that I have talked about before, that someone like you with roots in the community, with access to people who have priorities in this, or maybe Carol has a lot of knowledge about where to look for funding sources. Michael Saragosa specifically recommended that someone like Kirk or with a vested interest in maintaining our historical stuff, seek out grant funds for this, and that the city would be willing to maintain but not pay for an install. That was my recollection of it. So yes, I think we can highlight it. Yes, I think it's super important. I think it's the easiest evergreen way to tell people these exist that possibly can, it's not a lot of signs because they're all kind of on, one street. It's a start and entrance kind of thing.
And just a simple signage, and then it piques curiosity to go to the website
Yes.
to see all this other work.
I wouldn't do
One
QR
thing
codes.
that we're all aware of, thanks to the person on Sacramento Street, is that she acquired the property without knowing that she was in a historic district. and the bank had not informed her when she got the property that way. Ryan Carter, a couple years ago, had talked about the Real Estate Association could make sure that that was communicated that way. Janelle Horn, the county clerk, there was discussions with her about a way to make sure that people who buy property in parcels in certain sectors would receive formal notice that those restrictions were available.
Well, that's, that's another level, but a physical signage, I think, is, I think, arguably an inexpensive way to bring attention, at least to start. What you're talking about, I think that would really be good, but again, I don't know how the city can enforce it.
The issue I had with the Realtors Association is realtors come and go. So that's a constantly moving target. Someone could sell one house a year and be a realtor. They could sell the one house they sell is in a historic district and not be in this Realtor Association.
You can do it by city ordinance. For example, you have a city ordinance about things like installing a water heater, and that when you do work, you have to have a city license. So you can have a ordinance that would require real estate agents to make sure that when they sell property in a district, they have to inform the person.
I think that is impossible.
Anyway, the physical signage, I just wanted to bring that up to in prominence in our recommendations, because we've heard it time and again, and as I said, it's affordable. Catherine, you had a
No, I agree. And I think that the signage also, I mean, it has other benefits, like people visiting the city.
It was my idea about the signage, by the way. I brought it up for the first time, and so.
It makes that
that's what I said.
information,
It makes
yeah.
them real. It makes it interesting. It's not just the homeowners and about penalizing them for living in it, And I think too, Michael Drobish brought up an idea, and I have no idea how this works, about adding like an H on the. Yes, like having it be noted on there. Is that?
Actually, so just to go back to another point, we do have an ordinance. It's a certificate of lateral compliance ordinance that requires real estate agents to notify property owners that they have to scope their properties and make sure that the private sewer lateral lines are functioning in good shape. We have probably about 20 different realtors that are offenders right now. And I mean, we met with the Real Estate Association, and so we just sent out letters saying, hey, just a reminder. So even with an ordinance, we're not seeing the success that we should. As far as, I'm sorry, what's the?
Michael Drobish, when we were talking about this in a meeting a couple years ago, when this really started coming to head, and I really fleshed out some ideas of and some obstacles that I identified after really rolling around in this, of identifying those parcels with like an H or something after it, and I don't know the process for that.
I think he recommended a zoning overlay
We do have a zoning
for historic.
We have, we do have a separate historic map, but right now I actually have, I have our consultant working on updating our zoning map and our general plan map, because we've found it needs some help. But I also asked for the housing opportunity overlay, because some are listed, some aren't. Our housing element, site inventory overlay, and then doing our plan development overlay as well, because it's not identified anywhere on our maps. So I can certainly have them. I mean, it would be very easy to do the historic overlay, putting an H on the end, because we're doing the HO on the end of the housing opportunity overlays.
So would it be like HD then?
I was gonna say, or HIST, something to trigger someone to be like, what is that? And maybe investigate it. Again, that might be more complicated than it's worth.
Yeah.
The other idea I had was to send a flyer every year to everyone who lives in a district.
Right. It would be complicated, because we'd have to create the overlay, and then we would have to notice every one of those parcels, and
Yeah.
then anyone within 300-foot radius.
That's sort of what I assumed, is that it's a lot more work than it sounds like. I was like, that's an awesome idea. It's probably a lot of work and probably takes a lot of time. But the other notification thing besides the signs, which I think are really important and super easy to do for the long term, is just sending a flyer every year saying, just a reminder. And I started to work on this flyer last year. Now I'm like flashing back to when I was still really doing more active stuff on this, is I started to work on a flyer that was friendly and palatable and not scary, like saying, hey, just a reminder, you live in a historic district and this is what is required of you if you, with the most basic information, visit our website that is hopefully going to be built out for more information. Just an annual thing. Jackie No had agreed to work with me. We met, we talked about it. I began to work on it. I hit a wall and, and just never really finished it. But they had talked about putting it in either historic, in utility mailings to those homes, or just being a separate mailing that they got each year from the city, so that if ownership turned over, again, we're not targeting moving realtors or even ineffective realtors, but we're actually putting the knowledge into the hands of the homeowner so that they get it. It's annual. If that house sells every year, it's okay because it goes out every year. It's not every 5 or 10 years where we can lose people. And I don't think it's a very expensive way to remind people. I also think if those signs were up, we would probably not have to rely on that as much. But at least in the initial, once we got, and this has always been my hope, is once we got the website built out and more informative so that when people went to it, they didn't go what the heck is this and what the heck is going on? Then we can start having that annual notification, just a reminder, here's what's covered under this, here's what's expected of you, visit our website for more. Very basic, not scary, just like an exciting thing. Hey, just a reminder, you're part of Placerville's history. That's how I started to write it, kind of cheesy, hey, this is cool, not an onus.
What was the
not a burden.
resolution we
I have
had
a question
32 minutes
about-
ago?
I'm sorry?
What was the resolution we had that we voted on 32 minutes ago?
It was to bring forward the cover letter
Okay.
with,
And these things are going to be going in the cover letter?
No, not all of these things.
but the cover letter will be coming back to our meeting on Tuesday.
But I had a question about the overlay. I think I got confused. So you're updating the maps. Can you add the historic district overlays easily, or no?
So,
You have to go through the noticing process to add that?
yes, because we would be essentially changing their zone, adding this
An overlay.
historic. So it is getting every property owner to kind of be on board. And
So that's why it hasn't been, that's why we have those 3 hand or copied maps. We don't have it on our zoning map currently.
No, but we have a separate map that one of the engineering staff that does GIS, he did one. So it is, you can put your parcel in, you can find it, and you can click on it. And it's with Lori's and Amanda's that came forward prior. I did a map with the overlay from what was created by our staff. And so that you could see exactly where they were in the district.
And then in the future, if you click on that parcel, then you get the link to the cloud with all the information. And it's just a robust little each house that can just be filled as time goes on and information comes in, and empower the homeowners to know the history of their home just out of their own interest if they have it, and also visitors to be able to look at it and see, because it's there. It's already on the website, right? That's my
Yes.
vision.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
The county updated their viewer, and so we do not have any of our zoning or any of our information up there because we did identify some changes that needed to be made. So we want to update those, and we're going to send everything over. And when we send that over to the county GIS, I will be sure to include the historic map, and they could probably just easily put that in there. We'll have Wes give them the shape files. But like I said, I'm having 2 maps updated and then 3 overlays. So it's,
And I still don't even think that is super necessary or effective. If people again, you have to really want to understand that and dig into it, right?
Yeah, not everybody looks at their
Most
specific
people,
zone.
most people don't, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably a really high, like probably not very effective for the cost of effort thing. I think that the 4 priorities identified in Cleve's memo from the city council, which were to review the website, informational flyers, install signages, and conduct workshops, my feelings on that. I think that the why needs to be there, but I think the first 3 are a really easy way to empower homeowners to not be surprised and to be aware of and proud that they live in the historic districts. Because to me, this has always been, these exist. People don't know they exist, and why do we have them if they're not really being a highlight of our city, not being utilized to bring in people's interest? If people want to do tours and things like that, then I think that those 3 priorities right there would go a long way for very little investment or complication of doing overlays and everything, and be effective in communicating to people and the larger communities of what we have here.
And a mailer could even just be like a simple postcard
Postcard,
with
yes,
a QR code, not
something-
something that they have to actually open up, and
Yeah.
it could just be like, oh, yeah, okay.
And then people go, what? Then they can go to the website, and the website will be beautiful, and it will say, like, here's what it is, and here's what you need to know. And again, this only affects people if they want to change the outside of their house. If they're just living, this isn't affecting them. You know what I mean? Like, if they're
At
just
least no.
hanging out in their house every day, they're not affected by these things, So I think just letting them know in the context of physical updates, visible from the street, this is what this is our expectation and requirements as a city. Boom, keep it as simple as that.
All right.
All that to
We
say
have
is
our marching
that,
orders until next Tuesday.
well, and so I will not be at the next meeting or probably subsequent meetings. So I will do my best to
Make a formal announcement.
Yeah.
Do you
Oh,
have a
well, yes.
microphone?
Well, so if all goes according to plan, in the next 2 weeks with Flowing, I will be moving out of Placerville and moving down the hill to Cameron Park. So I will no longer be eligible to be a planning commissioner. So I will do my best to get all of my information in before
If you
I
just-
officially
just
resign.
Send what you have.
Yeah, I
That's
will.
going to be a great boon. So this is your last meeting, you think?
I do believe this will be my last meeting. Yes.
Well, I hope you will be able to come back for some ceremonial matters, perhaps?
I'll come back. I'm just down the hill. I'm not moving. As my husband says, I'm like, I'm so sad to leave. He says, Amy, we're not moving to Utah. We're moving to Cameron Park. Like, we're not far.
You're gonna come sit in the audience
Oh, you know
every
it.
every
I
month,
told
right?
Carol I'm going to be sending emails, giving her feedback on her things. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not. But my love and interest for this and the experience that I've had on here has been beyond incredible. And I'm so grateful for the almost 8 years that I've served on this commission. And I will truly miss it dearly. And I was very happy that the outgoing meeting that I was on the historic stuff, because I have spent a lot of time
You
rolling
have.
around in this for the
Well, I
last
want to thank
couple
you
of
for
years.
your hard work on this and everything else. You and I have been through quite a bit in the all too brief time on the Planning Commission. So thank you so much.
Thank
you. I hope you love Cameron Park. You deserve it. You and your family. I think you'll just love being down there.
Yeah, they have an architectural review committee, so look for me on there.
You won't be sitting around.
I have to say, as a new commissioner, I feel really fortunate that my times overlapped with yours. I've really enjoyed being on the commission with you and
Likewise.
respect you, and I've learned a lot from you. So
Thank you. Don't make me cry.
I'll miss you.
And you're always
thank you.
welcome back.
Yes. Like I said, it is a matter of geography. So I am leaving out of
And house.
necessary. Yes, we need a third bedroom. Wesley needs a bedroom. We have 2. We got 4 of us. We need to level up, if you will, in size.
reality.
Yes.
Talked about leaving, and I kept wondering, it's a little early for her to have another baby.
Yeah. Oh God, don't put that curse on me. No, thank you. Yes, it's truly been a pleasure and such an amazing learning experience. I didn't even know what a planning commissioner was when I found out that they were needing planning commissioners, and
We're not sure we know either.
yes. So it's been a great joy, and I love informing people when I tell them I'm on the planning commission, and they go, "What's that?" And I get to tell them, and then people know about planning commissions. So anyway,
You're a great
that is-
ambassador.
Yes, that is that. So.
I'll work with Commissioner Lepper on coming back and kind of celebrating her and the contributions she's made to the city.
Thank you so much.
Ask for a watch, okay?
I want a stopwatch,
All
please.
right.
I don't think we have any more
Chain.
watches. Like,
It
we've been
is,
giving them out lately.
Like the heart of the cowardly lion.
7:24, and before we dissolve into a fit of giggles, we stand adjourned until the 16th of June.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
I also passed out books from our consultant, so it's just a little SQL 101. I know, Catherine, you know this material and stuff, but just wanted to pass that out and
Thank you.
enjoy.
Are you going to leave yours there?
You know, I'm gonna just burn it when I walk out the door.
Where's the fire starter?
Take your name tag.
Yeah, Lookout County, here I come.
And look at the brochure. Who publishes it?